got to tell you what's great about Christianity, and it's not going to be easy. I will try to adopt the motto that King Henry VIII used with one of his wives. He said, "I won't keep you very long." This is Christopher Hitchens and my third time around. We've debated other topics before. It's our first time debating this issue. I really welcome the opportunity. In my opening statement, I'm going to make a positive statement about Christianity. In my rebuttal, I will correct the mistakes of Christopher Hitchens. Now, we're living in a very unusual time in which atheism has emerged as a kind of militant phenomenon. And on the face of that, that's a little bit odd. Because if you are an unbeliever, why be militant? I don't believe in unicorns, but I haven't written any books on the subject. I don't spend a lot of time denouncing unicorns. I live my life as if unicorns did not exist. But what we have from the atheist side is a belligerent attack on theism and specifically on Christianity. I want to try to answer this attack by using the same tools of reason and skepticism and science and evidence that is the banner under which the atheists march. In no way this evening will I rely on scripture or any kind of theology to make my points. I'm going to focus entirely on reason and evidence. Let me begin, if I may, this way. In reading through the various atheist books by Hitchens, Dawkins, Harris, and the others, if I were to make a list of the values that the atheists cherish the most, I would list values like the idea of individual dissent, the notion of personal dignity, the idea of equality, the equal dignity of men and women, an antipathy to oppression, inequality, and slavery, the idea of compassion as a social virtue. Now, what's interesting is that if you take a good look at this list, you realize that these values came into the world because of Christianity. How do we know that? Partly by looking outside of Western civilization, where we see that these things that we take for granted, there's a tsunami that devastates a place in Africa, all the Western, which is to say Christian nations, rush to help. Nobody else seems to. Something unique is going on that's internal to our civilization. Now you might say, well, Western civilization isn't just built on Christianity, it's built on Athens, by which we can say classical reason, and also on Jerusalem, which is Judaism and Christianity. And yet if you look at the world of Athens, which is to say Greece and then pre-Christian Rome, you discover that those were civilizations that were based on slavery. They were civilizations where women were treated very badly. They were civilizations where human life didn't count for a whole lot. The Spartans notoriously would leave the feeble child on the hillside to see if it was still alive in the morning. And the great philosophers of Greece and Rome viewed these incidents with equanimity. They didn't think it was a big deal. It is only from Christianity that these things that had been uncontroversial for a long time become controversial for the first time. In Sam Harris's book, he tries to blame slavery on Christianity. But the reality is that if you look at history, slavery was a universal institution, practiced in every known culture. The Greeks and Romans had it, the Chinese had it, there was slavery in ancient India, American Indians had slavery long before Columbus got here. So it is Christianity that mobilized the first movement in the world to oppose slavery. First the Quakers and then the evangelical Christians took a theological idea that we are all equal in the eyes of God, an idea that, by the way, for some centuries was seen as a merely spiritual truth, and they gave it a political application. If we are all created equal in the eyes of God, no man has the right to rule another man without his consent. This idea became the moral engine of the anti-slavery movement both in Europe and in America. And this concept is not only the moral root of anti-slavery, it is also the basis of democracy. What's the premise of representative democracy? No man has the right to rule another without consent. And I want to turn for a moment to science, because one of the rallying cries of modern atheism is the supposed incompatibility between Christianity and science, an incompatibility rendered puzzling at the outset because if you make a list of the leading scientists of the West in the past 500 years, you find that the vast majority of them were not only theist, but specifically and devoutly Christian. This was true of Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, Bry, Priestley, Lavoisier. You can just go down the list all the way through Gassendi, Mersenne, Mendel. Some of these guys were monks. Like Mendel, Gassendi, and Mersenne were priests. So right away you have a puzzle. We have literary theorist Christopher Hitchens and biology major Sam Harris positing a supposed conflict that was not evident to the great scientists of the West, stretching from Kepler to Newton. I want to make perhaps a further point about this, though. Not only were these scientists Christian, not only did they see their work as revealing the divine handiwork in the universe, but I want to argue that modern science itself is based on three Christian assumptions that are at root metaphysical. Assumption number one, the universe as a whole is rational.